I will call, in my role as vice chair, I will call the meeting to order. And I guess if we could just have the members go through, state your name, say present, just so we confirm attendance. Shay, present.
Moss, present.
Dolniak.
Oh,
Sorry, I'll call on everybody to make it easy.
Okay.
Bob, go ahead.
Bob Moss, present.
Alan,
Dolniak, present.
Claire,
Claire Reynolds, present.
and Sam.
Sam Stivers, present.
All right, so we have a quorum.
And
And
Brian, I will again
go ahead.
volunteer to take minutes for this meeting.
Great.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Appreciate that. Let me see if I can get. I think the first item on the agenda was review and approval of the 5/12/25 meeting minutes. I guess first, is there any discussion on those?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Shay, I will abstain. I wasn't at that meeting, so Shay abstain.
Bob,
Bob
approves.
Claire approves.
Alan approves.
Sam approves.
All right, so those are passed. Next item, the application. Hang on, I'm trying to go back and forth between, all right, the one-stop grant applications. So I guess where do we stand with those? I guess, again, because I wasn't able to make the last meeting, I guess if someone could just kind of fill in where we stand and what more work we need to do today on those.
Yeah, so last week we kind of broke up all the different parts of the application, went through section by section briefly to assign who was going to take on each section, whether it was Weston and Sampson or someone from the Wastewater Study Committee. And the purpose of this meeting is to see what progress has been done and see if there are any areas where anyone needs any assistance so we can move this application forward to submittal.
Okay.
If I can ask a question, Anna, do you have an update on that list with the assignments?
Yes, so I made a short agenda that is similar to the one from last week that I can share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yep. If you could maybe just change the zoom a little more so it fills more of the screen, that would be good.
Oh yeah.
Please.
And Anna, can I make a request too? Could you make sure this gets emailed to us so we can include, because it's a document presented at the meeting, just so we can include it in the minutes as well?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a few items as part of the basic agenda, and then the discussion items are going a little more individually into the application to talk about those different sections of the application and see where we're progressing with each part. So first, the primary points of contact we decided would be the town administrator last week. And from Al's email, it looks like he did have a discussion with Mark and that the organization CEO will be part of the select board instead of the town administrator.
Yeah, it should probably make sense to have that as the chair. I know it's currently Kathy Cook, but I think they have an agenda item tomorrow to vote on the organization of the board for this upcoming year. So that may change. We can provide that name to you.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. And then I also did notice since our last meeting, Claire sent over those expression of interest submittals and that Al was listed as the primary contact on the application. You can have both an organization CEO and a primary contact. And the reason to make those different is just so multiple people can receive communications. So I was going to ask in this meeting if it made sense to put Al as a primary contact so that he would also receive all those communications from MassWorks in the future.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Great.
Confirm project scope and discuss the number of applications to submit. I noticed the number of applications to submit was also a point that Al made in his email today. Based on some research that we've been doing, I did look back at some of the MassWorks grants, all the awards from the past 3 years, to see how many communities, received multiple in a year. And I noticed that it's really rare for a community to receive for 2 different projects, specifically a pre-development grant. And only one town over the last 3 years has received 2 grants for 2 different projects. So it's usually just one community gets one project. And based on our discussion from last meeting, it looks like Route 9 is the priority for the town. So we've been looking through it this week and looking through the applications, and we are thinking that it would be best to show the town's pure focus on Route 9. And then MassWorks could see that the town is really committed to that project.
Yeah, I think that makes sense from what we've talked about previously. I mean, if you can only have one, to me, clearly Route 9 is the preference. I mean, it is longer term maybe, but by far more important. So it sounds like a sensible approach.
Folks, if I may comment, I'm not exactly sure how you were looking at this, but I can tell you that Leah Emerson went through all of she's the economic development coordinator. She went through all of the FY25 awards, and there are multiple towns who have received multiple grants. She has all of that information in a spreadsheet. She even has it broken down by the type of grant. So the reason that I'm saying this is I sent out an email today that just talks about why I think we should, even though we kind of poo-pooed it last time on the downtown, I did some research and put together some argument for why I think that we should go ahead with 2 different. It's actually for downtown, it's a different type of grant. It's not a MassWorks grant.
The downtown grant wouldn't be a MassWorks grant?
The downtown wouldn't. It would be a community planning grant. It goes under that category. There's 34 towns in Massachusetts who received last year community planning grants ranging from $13,000 to $150,000.
And
the other thing
is that
yeah, just in the interest of time, Brian, I know you have a hard stop. I think if we can just go through this quickly, I have an Excel spreadsheet for both of the grants, the way I see them, and I'm open to everything. And what it does is it actually scopes out the different sections of the grants, 2.18, 2.14. And I think that's what we need agreement on in terms of who should do what. And I'm glad to do a screen share of it when the time comes.
But Claire, are the 2 different grants, they're still under the one-stop umbrella, right?
Yes.
So, again, it's to me that somebody at some point in one stop is going to look at, the Southborough 1 or 2.
Well,
and I think we've got some good opportunity with Tony Kwan on the downtown that seems to be
yeah, exactly.
path to the finish
Right.
line.
And that
Grant.
actually fits into what I, just quickly put together, because I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time if I wasn't going to get support on it. But I have all that. As you remember, Sam, there was a tremendous amount of work that was done with the whole downtown project.
Sure.
Okay, and Claire, you said that you have a spreadsheet of all the awards that have been in the past. Would you be able to share that with me?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other opinions on this one?
I'll just
I
voice my
think-
opinion. Oh, go ahead.
Go
Who's
ahead.
talking?
Go ahead, Bob.
I still think the only financially feasible thing to do is a Tony Quam deal of some sort downtown. And that, it doesn't even seem like you need, well, I mean, you need a deal with him or some, draft type of deal or, preliminary deal to even go forward spending any money, unless you, I'm a little bit on this one stop still concerned, even though there's a couple subcategories that it is two. And it seems like until, just Tony Quam doesn't sound like we're gonna have an answer in 2 weeks. And it seemed like we get our Route 9 in and do our best job on it. And even if so, I guess in worst case, we got to go back to the state a year from now for downtown. But we'll know if Tony Quam's in or out then, and certainly if he's in, that we could have a really good application. Because
Actually, I agree with everything that you said, but if you look at what they consider in the community planning, and folks, if you don't believe me on this one, you ought to check with Rob Anderson, because I already have. And he has written to the select board that two grants is not too much, so to speak. It's
Okay.
all part of what the one-stop grant calls the development continuum. And I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of hearing me talk about that, but it is real. If you have a chance, read the email that I sent out early this morning on downtown, and I think that'll convince you. We don't have to make a decision on it right now, but I'm just saying, let's not throw it out just yet.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Alan, did you have a point on that as well?
I was going to say I don't. I think it's fine to pursue both, especially because yes, they'll under the umbrella of one stop, but they're going to be two different funding sources. So I don't see why it hurts us. So
Then I think I tend to agree with that as well.
Okay, then we can move forward with both if,
I'm gonna just,
yeah.
hi, I'd just like to take an opportunity mostly to introduce myself to the folks that I haven't spoken to in the past. My name's Chris Perkins. I work with Anna at Weston and Sampson. I'm a vice president here. Was involved in, my team was involved in the downtown work we had done for you folks prior. Claire, I think we had spoken over the years, me and Rob Musi. And then we had, that same team had done the Route 9 corridor work for you folks. So I wanted to firstly introduce myself, say hello. And the only concern I'll note relative to whether we're running single path or dual paths here is really, it just comes down to, how compelling can we prepare applications? I just want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward in these applications, and time is tight. And I just want to make sure that we're able to kind of devote the resources to be able to kind of deliver. And as we start getting into sort of, the last few days here, I just worry about that a little bit. So I just want to be thoughtful about making sure we're not harming either application by chasing both. And so I just want to think about resource allocation that's available over this very narrow window.
so should we take a straw poll vote on which of the two is a priority, or do we all generally agree which one?
So I would vote Route 9. I think that's more, consistent with the purpose for creating the committee in the first place.
I would as well.
Me too.
I agree.
Okay, so
Right.
Chris, with that,
hang on, what did Claire looked like you were going to
Thank you.
jump in?
Yep. Sorry, Claire.
I totally disagree. And the reason is, I understand what Chris Perkins is saying. And hi, Chris, I did talk to you a long time ago with downtown when we first got involved with this. If you look at the applications, they're two separate applications. I put together a spreadsheet that says section 2.18 is a town responsibility. Section 2.19 is a Weston and Sampson responsibility. The max response that you can have per section is 2,000 characters, including spaces. This is not a heavy lift. And I don't know.
And just to be fair, though, I think what was posed was between the two, which has higher priority, not whether we should continue to only pursue the Route 9.
Oh, okay.
So-
All right. Yeah.
so-
Then I would, yes. Okay. Then I would go for Route 9 also.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
with
think-
that, Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Nope, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, so Chris, your message is, at least for me, and I think for the board, is heard loud and clear. And I think because of that, let's focus the most effort we can on Route 9, and then after that, or in parallel or something, secondarily would be the other one. And if we get both done with equal measure, then that's great. But we certainly recognize limited time, staff, effort, etc. And now you guys know which one sort of ranks higher than the other.
Yeah, that's fair, and that would be our preference as well. Is really, I think Route 9 is. I mean, I think it's a really compelling argument you're going to be able to make. I appreciate there are multiple. You know, it sounds like depending on which bucket you go into, there are multiple examples of folks securing funding for both. I think they end up being a lot of work, though, right? And not just the application, but the actual execution of the work. So I just want to make sure that you're biting off the right chunk, right? That's all. The Route 9 corridor represents a substantial infrastructure project. It gets into an arena that you're not playing in currently relative to the type of utility we're talking about, and that alone can introduce a lot of additional sort of burdens for a community. So I just want to make sure we're all going in with our eyes wide open.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just one other quick
Yep.
thing.
Go ahead.
Chris, because you haven't been at the other meeting, the ask that was sent with the EOI for Route 9 was $400,000 for a hydrogeographical. Come on, guys, help me out on this one. Study, okay, of the area that we're talking about. This was actually one of the sections in the Route 9 wastewater feasibility assessment that you folks did. So all of that information is in the document that you guys have already produced. In terms of responding to what we have to do short term in the 2 weeks.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I think what we'll get into, Claire, I mean, you're right. We had done a desktop analysis as part of that prior work for the corridor, and really for both areas, right? It's obviously one of the biggest sort of fatal flaw analyses you need to do early on, is to say, okay, is there any chance of us being able to put this effluent back in the ground, right? And that's both areas. And so as we think about the next steps is where we'll go with the transition from the desktop analysis to, again, fatal flaw analysis, ranking of sites, identification of sites, determining what sites you might have access to and might be available for you to procure that you don't own currently, and to go put some holes in the ground. So the next scope that we need to develop in support of these applications is to articulate that, to say, okay, here's where we are, and we're going to get into it. Are we at a 10% design stage based on prior work? Are we at 15? Are we more or less? Subjective, we'll figure that out. And then what are we going to ask for money, and what does that enable the community to get done? And that'll be where the hydrogeologic assessment is a key piece to that. This next stage would not be comprehensive in that regard. You wouldn't do all the field work. You wouldn't do all the study and analysis, but you would, again, get through that fatal flaw analysis. You'd be able to ideally find sites that might be that you may have the ability to acquire, and that have some level of capacity that can discharge some amount of effluent to the ground again. And then it's an iterative process where you're comparing those volumes of what you might be able to put in the ground, and you're comparing to what you might generate along the corridor or in the downtown.
I understand all that, but if I may, isn't the point of today's meeting just to say, what are we going to do? We have 2 weeks left to get the application in.
Yeah, I think it'll be part of what we want to make sure we're on the same page as far as what the scope might look like. And we don't have to get into those details today, but it'd be helpful for us, again, if you're thinking about the $400,000 ask, and there's some, I don't recall if it was an additional, 25% of that was the additional by the local community, and that allows us to start working in and building out that scope of work that supports the application.
I just asked, what is the latest ask on Route 9 dollars?
The expression of interest was for $400,000.
Also,
No,
maybe I'm confused. I thought downtown was 400,000.
no, that was 2 million.
Oh, okay, okay, that's why I'm confused. But is it way too early to ask for 2 million, considering the status of
Yes.
downtown?
Absolutely.
So should that number be revised if we're realistic to try to get something?
No, because if you look at what the state clearly says, you need to show them that you are following what they call a development continuum. So in other words, you brought up earlier about Tony Kwan, and those are all really good points. And it's all of the steps before we do a big ask. We need to show them that we've done all of the steps that are needed to be taken care of before we do the big ask.
Mhm.
This is a project that's not ready for its time just yet.
Yeah.
But the thing that concerns me too, to your point, Bob and Claire, is that if we're being expected to do a like 25% match or something like that, if we ask for 2 million, that's $500,000, and the
Right,
chance that we're
yeah.
gonna find that is pretty slim.
Yeah, and
Whereas
that's why I'm saying, let's bag
400,000
that one and let's
limited.
do it the way the state wants us to do it. You have a much better shot at getting money.
I guess I gotta say, I'm a little confused. I was kind of suggesting that downtown needs this another step also. And if it's 400 does it, they're really similar steps, I think. But you know, the 400,000 gets us in the next phase of analysis on Route 9. But it seems like 200,000 would be enough to figure out downtown. It would be plenty just to go to the next step. And it might be more palatable to the state. I'm just throwing that out, but if I were the state looking at it, I'd kind of, you know, that the downtown project is just a really small project when you're talking sewer systems. And like we're saying, we got to study how many people there are to hook up, what's the possible expansion, you know, additional users, new users, renovations. And I assume that's what that money will get used for, plus maybe a little preliminary, how would you set up a system? Gravity, do you need any pumps anywhere? And of course, by then you got to decide where we're going to put it all. And that would be the Tony Quam tie-in. So I guess I'm just confused why we're asking for 2 million. It seems like we're jumping a step to me.
And when we
And
did
I would
survey
agree with you with
downtown-
that as well. Oh, go ahead.
When we did the survey downtown as part of the downtown rezoning, we found no interest from the current residents down there to tie in. A couple of businesses were very eager to tie in, but in terms of broad use, I think we're sort of betting on the future with the downtown system as far as commercial development in that area, which I hope will come and would expect would come. But I think there's a lot more near-term possibility on Route 9 for that. So, but again, if it makes sense to ask for like 200,000 for downtown, that's to me a much more palatable number, particularly with the match as well. I think match money is going to be a struggle to come by, but we'll certainly go hard for it.
Yeah. All right. And Claire, just so I'm clear in my mind, I know you're really advocating submitting both applications, wanting to include the downtown one. The downtown one has a $2 million ask with it, but then you said that we should scrap that and go for a different and approach it differently. And what
Yes.
would specifically would you? Are you thinking the 200,000 is better in line?
Nope.
Go
It
ahead.
goes to what's called a community planning grant. So in other words, Sam just mentioned the residents weren't keen on this. We've never really taken a look at the properties that are down there, and who would be willing to, you know, what do they want to do with Park Street? I've already talked to the guy who's building out in 21 Boston Road. Peter Bemis, his thing is in progress. There's other properties, you know, working on what Tony Kwan's original plan was. So what you want to do is you want to line up all of these things. So you identify the possibilities and the opportunities that you have before you go for a big ask. What I'm asking for is the state will give you money to hire, you know, a professional to put together a plan. I mean, we can certainly get it started. And back when EDC did some of those things.
Mhm.
And we can certainly do that to show that, yeah, we have a plan. And maybe we do have private development built into it, that after a plan is put together and Tony agrees or somebody else agrees, we have that so that then the state can see as part of their development continuum. And like I said, go back and read what I really tried to put as simply as possible this morning, taking stuff right from the state website. Once again, if you don't believe me, ask Rob.
Mhm. Claire, I'm still confused. To Brian's point, what are you suggesting we ask for downtown specifically? How much money?
I haven't really put together, you know, I would say we could get it done for $15,000. It's just a plan to be able
Okay,
to
yep.
put together, kind of like when we did the ULI study. Do you remember the ULI study?
Yeah, yeah, but
It was-
you just said earlier $2 million, so that
That was
confused me, so,
the original ask for
Right,
downtown was
yeah.
for the 2 million.
right. But now you're suggesting for this other planning grant, 15,000, 20,000, maybe even go for a little more.
One for downtown, okay, which would be the community planning grant. And what I did was I pulled from the same list that I'm going to send to all you guys and to Anna, that the types of grants. There were 34 grants last year, and what they granted the money for, so that I'm not making this up. And then the second thing is what we decide to do with Route 9. Does anybody have any questions on that? 2 grants, different amounts, actually
Yep,
different.
2 grand, different amounts, but, and I think, you know, where previously we had been discussing a $2 million number for downtown.
Right.
Now
right.
let's just focus on a study number.
There you go.
And personally, I think 15 is tight.
Okay, make
I
it
think
30.
for a planning purposes, I'd almost lean towards, you know, 50 just to have that in there. And if it comes in, you know, whatever it comes in at, you know,
Right, yeah.
more or less than that, we don't have to go back if
Right.
it turns out to something
Yep.
more. So
Exactly.
Brian, I agree 50 would be perfect, because then you got 50 to work on, see how many people you're gonna be able to hook up and what's the potential. And you got time to work something out with Tony Quam, because they still go back, double back what I said on a meeting last week. I don't think you're ever gonna justify building your own plant for the amount of sewage that's in that area. You
Yep.
know, I just don't think the economics would be horrible.
All
And,
right.
you know, the town doesn't want to go forward and just do it to keep the few downtown businesses happy. It's got to make economic sense that it doesn't, you know, pays for itself basically, or you get enough
Yeah.
redevelopment that it is really advantageous.
So the plan is 50 for downtown and what was it?
So 400,000
400 for Route
for Route
9,
9.
and move on both.
Alan, does that work with you as well? I'm not seeing Alan on the
Yes, it does.
on the
Yep.
screen.
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right. So unless anybody objects, I was gonna turn it back over to Anna just to continue going through the agenda here so we can, you know, identify
Yep.
where loose ends may be and where we need to focus work just to be able to meet the deadlines. So go ahead, Anna.
Yes, great, thank you.
Yeah, and I want to just add an addendum to the 50 and 400. Can I ask, what are we thinking? What's the community thinking relative to the match for both of those, for each of those, I should say?
We heard 25% was required, as little as
25%
possible.
of the request.
Can you get away with 20 or 15?
It's more of making your grant application competitive.
Right.
When MassWorks looks at your grants, match funds show commitment.
Yeah.
Yep. So
that's a
do we
match
have
that
to be,
the-
and do we have to be specific on how we're going to meet it at this point? Or is it just indicating the 25%?
Well,
You do have a section on the application that asks where the match funds are coming from, yes.
Okay.
Or where they would be coming from.
and I think we need
Yeah.
to make sure that the total that we're between the requested grant amount and the match supports the scope that's being articulated as well.
There would be, what Sam's suggesting is you gotta probably go back to town meeting to get 100 grand, to match Route 9 and maybe 12.5 for the other one. If the town meeting doesn't even support the matching grant, I mean, the project kind of dies, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but
Yeah.
if they're
No, but
required,
I mean-
because I know you guys have a little bit of funds available in some different accounts, but I think that 100 grand would have to seriously come up as a
Yeah.
new line item.
Most likely, yeah.
So,
Or it's a big portion of it.
and I apologize, I should know the answer to this, but I don't. And the timing for coming up with the 25% match?
It really just has to come with the project. So the timeline for MassWorks is you would find out around the fall of this year, you got
Yep.
funding. And for the entire project, you would get reimbursed from MassWorks for the amount awarded. So each month you submit a reimbursement request, you say, this is the
Yep.
amount of work we did, this is how much it costs, and they would only give you the amount awarded. So
Okay.
you would just have to come up with the remaining funds by the end of the project.
So Anna, if let's say 400 is the number and we say we're going to match 100, if we go forward and the project only costs 300, they award us 300, we don't have to come up with any match.
Yes.
Interesting.
I have a difference of opinion, and the
Yeah,
only reason is because I've actually project managed the 2 grants and did all the accounting to the state. The match comes from the town. If you get awarded the $400,000, you start the project, say January of 26. As funds get spent, you have to provide you have to provide the match.
With each
Understand,
invoice, for each invoice for the project, you pay 25% or whatever.
you have to indicate whether it was from town services or what they call in-kind services. So in other words, let's say that I'm just making this up, that we had a DPW person who was spending X number of hours working with the engineering firm. Then whatever that person makes, you multiply it by the hours and there's your match. That's how it works.
Yeah. So that we could demonstrate in an application now that we could commit to
Yes,
offering town resources, right? I think we're going to be hard pressed to come up with 100,000 in town resources for the Route
Right.
9 project.
right.
We just had town meeting and there was $0 appropriated at town meeting for these projects. Okay. So if we had a town meeting, a special town meeting in the fall, could we write in the application that, it's our intent to have an article at a special town meeting in the fall for the 100,000 for the town share of that project? Is that feasible or no?
We could certainly do it.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, does that meet muster on the application itself? Like we don't have to
Yes.
have the money.
You don't have to have
appropriated
them right now.
right now.
It's
All right.
where you're planning on getting the funds from. Yes.
All right. All right. So I think that's the approach that we need to take
Agreed.
without having any, because nothing was in the last town meeting for this. So,
Yeah. And with the flexibility to have in-kind support, that creates an opportunity there as well. to
Exactly.
soften the blow.
exactly.
Good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we'll just want clarity from you folks on what the split of future warrant articles, what that actual number will be and what fraction of those matches will be in kind. So we again can incorporate those into the scope that we're going to be developing in the next handful of days here.
So we can follow up with you separately on that, right? Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay. Anna.
Great. So I think next would just to go through, quickly go through some of these items and talk about any progress and if there's anything going forward that needs additional assistance. So Al sent that email this morning, and he has talked with Mark, and it looks like there aren't any community development tools that have been used by the town. So we won't be checking any of those boxes, and that's totally fine. For Weston and Sampson progress, we have made really good progress specifically on Route 9 for all 5 of those sections, and I've started on the downtown sections as well. So Alan had the idea at last meeting to put them in the SharePoint site for people to comment on when they're in a good place for a draft. So later this week, when both of those applications are in a good point to be reviewed, I'll put them in the SharePoint site. And I'll send an email to all of you to let you know that it's in the SharePoint site, and you can add comments to them if you have any thoughts on those.
Anna, I've been
submissions.
adding comments to both grants that you posted.
Yes,
Is somebody else making comments? Because the only ones I'm seeing are mine.
I haven't made them yet in the SharePoint site. I'm writing them just in a Word document to be able to
Oh,
count the
okay.
words a little easier. And then once they're at a good point to share with the town for everyone to look at, I'll post them to the same SharePoint site.
A
Okay.
good question, Claire. Bob and I met and have some input on sections 2.8, 2.9 that I sent to Anna, but I'm concerned about the process because if all of us are adding stuff to that
Yeah.
one document there, at least my past experience with this kind of thing gets really confusing with everybody's chipping in, adding stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So there needs to be a
This is why one central doc was the suggestion, working in the SharePoint site. That way there's no having to patch
Right.
together 6 different files.
Right.
But
But I
isn't
think
that
it's
what we
best to-
have is one central doc? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
confused on this process.
But if Anna is the collection point for these things and she controls what goes into that document, I think that to me makes good sense, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'll put my documents in there, and then once they're in there, people could just make comments in there if they have any edits to them. And yeah, like Alan said, I think that might be the best way instead of sending it around in emails and people
Right.
trying to have different
And are you
emails on
saying
it.
that you're putting it right into the application like I am? Is that what you're talking about?
I haven't done that yet. I
Well,
plan
no,
on,
I understand that, but have you seen where I have written in? and,
yes,
you know,
I
the
haven't, and
actual
I'm,
sections? Okay,
and that
So
was really helpful.
if
And I'm
you-
using your information in my responses as well.
okay, so you're taking my responses and incorporating them versus putting them in as an edit, so to speak?
Yeah, I put the short project abstract and the project narrative, I put it together in a Word document so I could count the words easier.
Yeah, I have the same
to make
thing,
sure.
yeah.
Yes. And then last week I saw that you had edited those, which was great. And then I
Yeah,
used
so
your
if-
information to incorporate into my documents. And then when those are at the final draft standpoint, and that's when I'll share them this week.
Thank you.
Okay, and I sent comments from me and Bob to Anna directly in a separate document that I expect she will incorporate in there as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sending that over. So yeah, that moves into your sections, the anticipated outcomes. I saw that was for Route 9, I believe,
Right.
the when you sent over. So we would need the same document for the downtown district as well.
Okay. Yeah, Bob and I didn't actually talk about downtown specifically. We can do that. To me, that's harder to predict, but we can take a whack at it.
Mhm. Yeah, that'd be great. And also the site information, site ownership, and private development sections. Those are short answer sections where you can really dig a little deeper into the specifics of any private developments that you know of that would require sewer in the future for full development. So if you have any sites like that, this would be a great place to put all that information. And if not, if there aren't any specific sites, there's also a section where you can talk about how this sewer would spur development.
Right. And we put some of that in the overview piece, but I guess I'm not aware of any project right now that is awaiting sewer for going forward, but I think you could say that just about any site in these areas that we're looking at is got a lot of upside from sewer development. So I'm struggling with how you articulate that, but we'll take another look at that.
Great, and yeah, and we can also get on a call separately together and work through it together as well. I
Okay.
have some time for that.
Good, thank you.
And then the grant request amount, the match amount, we just discussed that a bit. So I think we'll move forward with saying that the town meeting vote will be in the fall for these
Yeah.
match funds.
Sam, do you know if there's at least was any discussion about having a fall town meeting again this year?
Lots, yeah. I think it's very likely to happen for a variety of reasons. And the challenge is it needs to be as late as possible for various reasons. But then that puts a crunch on the tax rate setting. So the last I heard was like late October, early November kind of time frame. But there
Okay.
sure seemed to be a strong push to actually have the meeting.
Okay. And just let me ask this. Let's say it doesn't happen. We don't have a special town meeting. Would a town meeting next spring still be okay to cover the town match
Yeah, so
if that
we'll
appropriation didn't happen till then?
yeah, so the timeline, which we'll get to next too, is important. So since design would still be going on at that point, that would still be okay for the match funds to
Okay.
be released then.
Okay.
Just one quick note about the town meeting. I'm unaware of how that process works of like when something gets submitted for a request to be added to the warrant. Could we, Sam, you probably know better than most, but could we maybe take an action item to say that, yes, that we want to, if there is a fall town meeting, we want that on there, and to whom do we submit it and things like that? Or
Yeah.
what do we have to draft to make that happen?
Yeah, fairly straightforward. Make the request to the select board, send
Okay.
the proposed language, and the select board will vote at some point when that meeting is scheduled to open the warrant. Usually it's open for at least a month or so, sometimes more.
Okay.
Get on there. It
All
shouldn't
right.
be a problem. I would think the board is supportive of this project, and
Yeah.
and with Al there, I think he can certainly push to have that happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just some text. All right. Great. Thank you.
Quickly, do you guys know, this isn't, the WNS people don't have to be concerned with this. Do you know that this, the grant and the application and the funding and stuff is in, an item on the select board meeting tomorrow night?
I'd noticed that, yes.
Okay. Some of these, the reason I bring it up is because some of these things that we're talking about may well get vetted tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so just moving forward to the next item on the agenda, there is a section about transit-oriented development. It wants the town to just describe the project area and how close it is to public transportation. So if it's close to a train station or close to a bus station. So are you aware of any big train stations or bus stations where a lot of people would travel through near either the Route 9 corridor or the downtown corridor?
Commuter rail goes through southern part of town.
Mm-hmm.
There's a stop in Southborough and Westborough.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the Metro West Regional Transit Authority has a bus line that goes through town. Not wonderful service, pretty sparse, but at least it provides public transit access. Those are the two major.
There's another item in that the new transit-oriented zoning, the two biggest parts of that are probably like a little over 35 acres of 50 was Madison Place Apartments and the tow company next door, that both of them potentially could expand with the sewer, but they now have that zoning. So this proposed Route 9 corridor or sewer line goes right in front of the majority of the land zoned for transit-oriented development in Southborough. If that's what the state's looking for.
Yeah. Did you say Madison Place Apartments?
Yes, and Ted's Towing, they're contiguous to each other. And of the 50 acres, they represent about 35 of the 50 acres that were zoned for this. There's one industrial building about 5 way far away, and the rest is on the south side down by the train station, because you need to have, I think it was 10 acres down there.
Acres. Yeah.
But this is as big as Southborough gets. You're 70, this new sewer line would be in front of 70% of their transit-oriented development zoning.
Great point, Bob.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely great to include.
And then Chris, for your info, Bob is the gentleman who actually developed Madison Place there originally, so he's very familiar with that.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yes.
And built a treatment plant there.
Nice.
Too bad we
Not
can't just
quite.
expand that one, right?
Not
Yeah,
quite 1 million gallons
be
a day
great.
yet, but
And next for timeline confirmation, this is another thing that MassWorks really looks at to see what projects will be shovel ready or close to shovel ready at the end of the grant. So for the Route 9 project, we estimated design status was about 10%, could be closer to 15 or 20. Just with the feasibility studies that have been done with the project. And then the design status after the grant, we anticipate with the proposed scope, as discussed with the $400,000, would be at about 75%. So final design and then construction would still need to be completed after the grant.
Mhm.
Then for the downtown district, probably since it's just a planning document, I would say maybe it would be around 25% after the grant. I know some studies have been done for the downtown district, so we could probably also say the same, around 10% with that background information. Does anyone have any comments on that, or is that acceptable to move forward with?
yeah, I don't have any technical skill for that, but that sounds reasonable.
No, that seems reasonable to me as well.
Agree.
And we also discussed the design completion timeline a little bit last meeting of June 2027. And so that would give about a year and a half for the design of specifically Route 9. That was the date that we discussed. For the planning document, we might want to say a little sooner to show that the town is going to get right on both these projects. So probably for the design, we would say about June 2026, which would give about 6 months for that planning.
Sounds reasonable.
And then another thing I wanted to talk about that we didn't really get into last meeting was what the construction timeline would specifically look like after the grant. So first for Route 9, we're at 75%, June of 2027. Would the town then proceed to look for more grant funding immediately after that date to do some final design and construction?
I would hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Don't see why one would wait. Brian, do you have any different view of that?
Nope. Keep the train, keep it moving.
Yep.
And is there any idea for financing the project right now, how that would be done in the future? I know that there was a financial analysis done like for the Route 9 project, showing that commitment, showing that you've looked forward to the future is helpful if that's how you are going to proceed with funding the project.
Well, we've talked about a number of options there in terms of all the way from, the town does the whole thing and bonds it and gets paid back through the user fees. We've talked about creating a private public utility kind of function, which is a pretty steep hill to climb as far as we can tell. And There are other state programs. This district improvement financing thing that MasterWorks has gives another way to take some of the incremental tax revenue and pay off the bonds with that. But as far as I know, there's no clear, winner in that. The most, I guess, the most predictable one is if the town funds it, but it's obviously that kind of money passed by town meeting.
Mhm.
So not clear answer there.
Okay, and that's fine. We could put something here about that the town will be pursuing these options in the future,
Okay.
going towards construction.
And that
Great.
final decision is going to involve a lot more than just this committee. So
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
we're not
absolutely.
authorized to,
Mhm. And nothing is
make that
set in
decision.
stone in this application, moving that far down the line.
We just had a town meeting vote turning down a $68 million school allocation, so there's plenty of extra money there to go after here. This is cheaper and better financial payback in the long run.
It shows the mood of the town, though.
Yeah.
Well, the
Exactly.
interesting thing was one of the main themes at that was our taxes are really high. And even in the discussion, people were saying, we really want some different tax base other than residential. We would like to
Yeah.
see some commercial and retail tax base. So I actually think this is incredibly opportunistic timing.
Very relevant. That's right. Yeah.
Good.
But it's a hard message. I mean, again, people were, upset about taxes. And even though that particular project has a fairly small impact on their property taxes, it's really hard to get this kind of thing passed. So anyway,
I just want to quickly point out it's 12:52. Brian has a hard stop at 1. We also have an attendee with a hand raise. So I just want to bring all
Oh,
that up to see how we
okay.
can how we advance. So
do you know who that is with the hand raised? Alan?
it is Michael. Do you want me to give Michael the
Sure.
option to? Okay.
Sure.
Michael, I'm gonna you should now have the ability to unmute your mic and you can share your comment or question.
I like that idea.
I like that idea. I like that idea.
Michael,
Yeah.
you're unmuted. We can hear your background noise. Did you have a question or comment?
Sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. I'll stay muted.
Okay, your hand was raised, so I thought you had a comment or question, but okay.
Sorry.
All right, all set. Back to you, Brian.
So I guess, Anna, anything else that we need to run through on your agenda?
For the letter support, I believe Al was working on that, so I will touch base with him about that. He also included some information in his email, so make sure that's just moving forward.
Yeah.
And then
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna move on to the next point. So if you have a
Nope, go ahead.
the IGX portal is how you submit the grant application, and I was wondering if it would be possible to share access with myself, so I could easily put some of once we have all decided on all the different sections, it'd be easy for me to just copy and paste all the sections in there. And I'd also like to see the functionality of the form to make sure we've hit each point correctly.
Okay.
Is it the town administrator assistant who currently has?
Vanessa
Yes.
Hale.
Yeah.
I thought we talked about doing that independently, having another portal access for Weston Sampson.
I think we did. I think Anna's probably just mentioning again because as far as I know, we haven't given it to them, so we probably need to take the action to officially request that from Vanessa.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great, and I can do that. I just want to make sure that was okay with the committee.
Yes, absolutely.
I just double back in 30 seconds on the letters before. I think I get 2 letters from Dave Ferris is my neighbor, and I'm friends with him, and Bill DePietri. And just quickly summarizing all the properties they own up and down Route 9, and give a strong letter of support to get sewer up and down Route 9. And just who would they write the letters to, or the memos, or is that to anybody in particular, or?
Yes, I can send you an example of what one looks like.
Okay, I'll do that separate outside because we're running short on time, but
Yeah.
I think both of those will give us a good letter, and they own a lot of real estate up and down 9.
And we had a list
Okay.
of local committees that Al was, I think, going to approach to get letters of support. So you keep that moving as well.
And again, if folks want to continue meeting, we would still have a quorum. So it would still be 4 voting members if I were to bow out at 1. So if you want to continue meeting, you can. If I would, look for someone to be the vice chair or the vice chair for the meeting.
I could volunteer to do that.
Okay. Any opposition to that?
No.
All right. Very
No.
good. Very good. One thing I will, before I do need to leave, Al had mentioned the possibility of meeting again Thursday night.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking that would be a wise thing to do.
Yeah.
Do we agree? So I can follow up. I'll take the action to follow up with Al to request that we post an agenda to be able to continue this discussion.
And just one add on to that is that should probably be prioritized among anything else because of the 48 hours notice to make the agenda, et cetera, et cetera. So which probably sooner rather than later on that particular item.
Yep, I'll follow up with him right now. I think as long as we post by afternoon tomorrow, we'll be good to meet Thursday.
Right.
I assume Thursday night at 6:30.
6:30 was what he proposed. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Anything else application related that we need to discuss? Or I guess, Anna, if there's really, really hot items that you just want to reinforce that we should get to you, and maybe even in advance of that, the meeting Thursday, just to keep everything moving forward.
Yeah, I think the project outcomes is really important, the anticipated outcomes that Sam and Bob were working on, because I think it's important to incorporate some of those important points in the project narrative also earlier in the application. And also just remembering that we have everything that we have to do twice, one for each application. So letters of support, we need one for Route 9 and we need one for downtown for each organization CEO and each stakeholder.
And Thursday evening is Zoom again, or do we want to try for in person for that one?
I would. Well, I'll recommend to Al that we see if we can get the public safety room or some other meeting room, but also have a Zoom option for those unable to attend in person.
I could do in person and would prefer that.
I could do in person as well Thursday.
Me too.
I cannot do in person, but I'll try to do the Zoom.
Okay.
I can do both.
Good.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so Brian, you got to go then.
Yeah, I need to go. I will turn the gavel over to you, and good luck with the rest of the discussion. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks,
Brian.
Thank you. Okay, so Anna, are we done then with the application discussion?
Yes, I got through all of my points. Yes.
Good. Okay. Next topic is sites. And I guess Bob has some information, excuse me, about the Dell site there that I think would be useful to share with the group.
Well, I sent a package this morning, which I didn't expect anyone to have looked at. Having been a developer up and down Route 9 and all these years, to me is by far the most feasible site. It involves EMC Dell and a private owner for both a plant and recharge combo. And I sent a package. I just wanted to ask my fellow board members if it was all right to send it over to you guys at this point at Sampson. Does anyone have any? Because we haven't talked about it either, which will probably happen Thursday. I had quite a bit more information for them to analyze it. The expected perk rates and some other nuances about the site and ownership issues and et cetera. So and again, it was just sent out this morning, so I didn't expect to talk about that in particular today. But is it all right to send it to Chris and Anna? I don't see any reason not to. but
Yeah,
it's,
I
for
don't either.
me, it's a very good potential site. And I know that Sam's working on this with the state on Route 495, and Al is working on the golf course. And other
Yeah.
than that, I don't think we have any other real possibilities at this point.
I think that, Bob, and I have taken a look at, I did, read your email and opened it up. This is something that however you got it, it's not like it's coming from another, it was sent to your personal email address.
Yes.
And, it's not, as such, is not, I don't believe, considered a public record. And I
Okay.
would be very careful in terms of putting forth something out there, particularly since there have been a couple of selectmen who have already met with Atlantic Management. None of us on that, on the committee know what was discussed. So
Right.
personally, I think you should just keep it to yourself right now. It's not
Actually, Claire,
anything.
I do know what was discussed. I met with Atlantic with
Oh,
that
okay,
group. And that's still, again, very tentative. And
right, yeah.
not something that Atlantic is comfortable with talking about, given that there's still a lot of
Well, that's my
negotiation
point.
going
Well,
on.
I wasn't talking, I was discussing, we can't realistically, first of all, the timing's too early, but we're totally unrealistic to, some private person or company or somebody's gonna own all these different places, potential
Yeah.
sites,
Yeah.
whether it be the state or the golf course or whatever. If we want to talk, one of our agenda items, potential sites, I'm putting forward a potential site, which I think could be bought. And if we don't want to scare people that own these sites and think we're up to in cahoots or whatever, I don't mind just laying it aside for now.
Let me suggest the following, Bob. Let me follow up internally with a question or two about that, and I'll let folks know, and if it's appropriate to circulate it to the group for discussion on Thursday, then we can do that.
Yeah, because I thought our mission here is like to find sites. It's not
Yep.
to start negotiating to buy
Right.
them, but
Absolutely.
ones that physically will work
Yep.
is
Yep.
that's really what's important.
Yeah. And I'm inclined to continue to have that conversation, but let me follow up and just make sure that that doesn't rub somebody
Okay,
wrong.
so I'm not going to send it to Anna and Chris till we kind of get the clear go all,
Okay.
go forward on that.
Yeah, my expectation is that we're not going to, in the application, be identifying and listing specific sites in
Right.
either application regardless. So
Right.
Right.
my hope
We'll
would
slow you
be
down.
that if the committee can advance those kind of conversations such that we are as far down the road as we can be when we start,
Yeah.
when we secure the money, get working on the actual scope of work, then we hear from the committee, and boy, as far down the road as you can be at that point to understand who may be willing to partner with the town in this endeavor, the better off we'll be at that point. So I don't think it really will make the application any more attractive to be funded.
No,
if we
no, last thing
identify
I'd
one
want to
site
do is
anyway.
put forth this in our application
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
at
Yeah,
this
so
time.
But
I
I think-
appreciate that.
I think golf course is a somewhat similar issue in that we have had conversations with folks about the golf course. So that's sort of out there, but that's still hugely preliminary at this point. And there are
Totally.
other players who
Yep.
need to be involved in that one. But
Makes sense.
so let's hold off for the moment on that.
Mhm.
But, and on the I-495, again, as I mentioned previously, I've talked with folks from MassDOT, and they are going to get back to me with an outline of the steps that would be necessary to do that. I don't know, Chris and I can't remember if Chris and Anna have heard that. Is it the median between 495 lanes just north of Route 9? There's about 30 acres in there that is MassDOT property that is basically unused. They have one small communication facility there. But the feedback I got was that the answer is not no, but it's a steep hill to climb. Plus, they have seen things that have been far crazier than this have been allowed, and things that have been far more reasonable disallowed. So it's something that's very difficult to predict. But at least they've got a process with their real estate people, and my contact has said he will fill me in on those details, and we can then assess and see what we want to do with it. But
That would be super interesting. Yep. That would be something, that would be a new one for me. So yeah.
the neighbors are not going to complain there, for one thing.
Right.
Anyway, so, but I think that your point is a good one, Bob, that I don't think there are that many other sites around that are in the running for
You know,
this.
I mean, this is a small town.
Yeah,
Okay.
it gets to be a short list fairly quickly. in our
Let me
experience.
ask a question for Chris and Anna. I've heard conflicting opinions on using the golf course as a discharge area. Um, one opinion says that there are places who do that, and that you don't have to worry about having the pipes 8 feet underground to avoid freezing because of the temperature of the effluent is enough that it keeps it from freezing, and people use it as part of the irrigation system in other places. Other people have said that we're in a climate zone that just not practical for us. I mean, is there any data out there that says here's golf courses that are in places farther north from us who actually use golf courses for discharge areas?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think we'd want to first define the nature of the discharge, right? I think by and large, we're talking groundwater discharge,
Right.
not via open irrigation, right? Like, so let's look at the category of conventional groundwater discharge and to cite disposal systems beneath golf course features, beneath the fairways. Yeah, that's a standard use, right? It wouldn't be, it would all be subsurface. There has to be a clear recognition that should those systems, need to be replaced or somehow, something goes awry over a life cycle of 20 to 30 or more years, that you may need to access those components. There needs to be an understanding there. But by and large, yeah, there's nothing that would prohibit the use of those features as a groundwater discharge system.
Technically, it's not going to freeze, you think?
No, it really wouldn't. It won't. It isn't any different than the way you'd manage and maintain a disposal system under a soccer field, a recreational field, right? We've done them under U12 soccer fields, U14 soccer fields. We've done them they exist in other locations under fairways, as you described here. So that would be a very conventional use. And I wouldn't envision any issues with that. I mean, we'd want to think about it and make sure we're accounting for any of those kind of seasonal issues, but by and large, not an issue.
And the conservation restriction on the golf course specifically allows for installation and maintenance of an irrigation system. So I think we're in reasonably good shape there, although there are local interests who get very touchy about.
Yeah, we'd want to look at any kind of covenants or any kind of agreements that are already in place down the line as you're assessing sort of feasibility. The next question was really if you wanted to reuse effluent as irrigation water at the golf course, that would be a different situation. We'd want to think about that in the planning work as part of this scope of work. We would want to be assessing, as we do in every project, what effluent quality are we seeking to achieve, and is that suitable for groundwater discharge? If we felt like a seasonal irrigation sort of / water reuse application makes sense, then that would introduce more stringent discharge limits at the plant prior to that reuse. Oftentimes the economics of that outweigh the benefits, because you're not doing it 12 months a year. There are far fewer of those applications in the Commonwealth. There's one we run a facility, Dennis Yarmouth. We operate that plant, just so folks are aware. Weston and Sampson has an operations arm as well. We run the Dennis Yarmouth septage receiving facility, and they discharge to Bayberry, the municipal golf course adjacent to that plant. It needs to be a higher level of quality effluent than a typical groundwater discharge plant needs to achieve, such that you can discharge it and irrigate with it. And then what that also requires, though, is they don't have any other means to discharge wastewater effluent. And so what that means is they store all winter. So they have a 20 million gallon storage tank that supports that facility. If you were to build a facility like that now, that's,
it's complicated.
It's $1.50 a gallon, right, to construct that anyway. And so, it changes the entire economics condition. So by and large, it would be you'd need to have a lot of compelling reasons, you know, from where I sit now to justify a reuse application for the town.
Is it fair to argue that even with the underground discharge, that actually lightens the irrigation load for sprinkler
No,
systems?
it wouldn't benefit the irrigation. It wouldn't benefit the golf course at all in that
Nothing to do
regard.
with, nothing at
No.
all. Okay. Well, again, I think golf course is interesting, but in my view, a not leading option. for us
You
to-
never know. It can be fantastic. I mean, we're working with you know, we have a private community, a 300,000 gallon per day treatment system that's on the Cape. They are a groundwater discharge facility. They all of their disposal fields are beneath the fairways, and you never know where that goes. They may want to increase the capacity of that facility. It's incredibly easy for us to just add additional infrastructure in an adjacent fairway just next door to what's already existing.
Mhm.
It can be one of the most appealing options out there, frankly, because you don't have to dedicate land just for that. That you can get some additional benefit out of it in ways that really represents a pretty significant cost to dedicate that amount of acreage otherwise for nothing, to do nothing else with it. So to gain that, to put it somewhere where there's an additional use is a benefit oftentimes.
All right. Well, so we keep it on the list for future consideration. So any other places, Claire, Alan, Bob, that we ought to be thinking about here that you
It
comes to
just
mind?
jumped at me, what Chris said, because I was overlooking at the Neary School. I just wanted to size it up after that vote to see what it looked like. And I drove around both schools. There's a lot of land there, a lot of ball fields and open space there,
Mhm.
Considerable acres. And if it was perkable or whatever, it might be a great idea because the town doesn't have to buy it. And for recharge, I'm not saying put the plant there. It's worth looking at the amount of acreage and maybe try to get a determination. It's been altered, so we don't know what's underneath, but the very underlying soils might have a possibility. That just jumped out at me because I was just shocked that it's a beautiful like campus down there, and I've cut through it a few times and go down there and vote, but I never really realized there's that much open space down there, including ball fields.
Could be interesting, but for Chris and Anna, we just had a big school construction vote turned down at a special town meeting. And one of the concerns is the current school is about, I don't know, 200 yards from a former landfill the town dumped for many years. And there was a huge hue and cry about the seepage from the landfill is going to kill the kids at the school kind of thing. And that's been monitored and capped for several decades and no signs of any problem with it. But there was a lot of emotional reaction to potential toxic exposure out of the landfill. So I got to believe that if we actually talked about wastewater effluent going into the playing fields next to the school, that would generate
One other site that came to mind, just because you mentioned it, Bob, because of what you mentioned is, reaching out to St. Mark's. I know we don't own the land, but we have partnerships with them through town. I know they're on a pilot program, right? So they don't pay taxes, but they do partner with us. I did see in this select board agenda, they're gifting more money. If we position it as irrigation, and they have a ton of land right in the area, right on 85, that's amenable as well. Or
Yeah.
that could be amenable as
I
well.
agree.
They have their west campus on the other side of 85. I don't know if you've seen that. They had students housed over there when they built their new building recently. They moved all the students over to the main campus. And the cross-country course is on the west side over there. And there's actually quite a bit of land that's adjacent to Sears Road on the east side of Sears
Actually,
Road.
my house, right in the back of my house where I'm sitting now, abuts that. The trail goes right down behind my house. And they got
Oops.
75 acres up there on the hill, plus the ball fields up
Don't want to
at
put the
very top.
discharge area in your backyard, Bob.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you permission. I don't know if they'll give you permission.
Well, the
Thanks.
one thing, Sam, you mentioned the concern, that the landfill issue adjacent near or upgrading of the schools or wherever it sites itself. But, I mean, by and large, it can be a much easier argument in our experience to cite a discharge facility at a school, in particular, if there is a benefit to, if you make it as make it as part of, you're gonna have an improved surface at the conclusion, whether that's, a soccer field or something comparable. Everybody's kind of, and it can be, ideally, it doesn't veer into a similar argument as you have with potential risks of an uncapped or an unlined landfill. Simply because everybody has a septic at their house and they almost certainly are mowing it and using it as it's part of your yard, and this is a far higher level of effluent quality that you're putting out than you're putting out in your own home now.
Yep. We had a large amount of engineering input on this, and sadly, logic does not seem to go too far. This kind of stuff. But there is land around, again, some of the schools, and we certainly ought to consider it. I mean, again, I keep coming back to the Dell property as being a prime option for us, and not far behind that is the I-495 median there, which is far less likely, I think. So, but I'll follow up about the Dell thing and make sure that we can talk about that more openly here.
The Dell just from my understanding, Dell is the same as the EMC site. It's a different
EMC
site.
was the original company. They bought the land, and then Dell bought EMC, acquired
Okay.
EMC. So now it's Dell, and Dell had, I guess, a couple of large office buildings down there. And the new owners of part of the property have called Atlantic Management. They're developing some plans for the site. There's a commercial industrial zone property to the north of that site, and there's a bunch of residential, I don't know, Bob, 50 acres or something, a residentially zoned property to the southern part of that site. So it's a big site, and there are other developers sort of circling that as well, I think.
Okay.
So it's not clear what's going to happen with it at this point.
And they would almost certainly need to build their own facility, right?
Yeah, it could. Absolutely.
I would imagine.
Yep. And Westboro is out of capacity. We've talked to them as well. And that's, again, somehow they're not as interested. They should be, because they're stuck with their current site. So.
Right, but we also talked about doing something regionally, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, and Marlboro we've talked with as well. So if we did the I-495, Marlboro and Westboro, in theory, ought to be interested in talking to us. And they're, I would say, mildly interested, but not very aggressive about it. So, any other comments on sites? I think that's about it for us then. Nothing else? Okay. Any new business?
Sam, the only thing that I just wanted to confirm and then let Anna know, since it seems like we're pretty much in agreement that the original downtown application is no longer legit, so to speak. All right, we're scrapping that idea.
2 million, yep.
So Anna, how about if I have the community planning application specific, there's 3 of them. And I picked the one that's specific for what I think that we're looking for. It's much less arduous than the downtown one that we were working on.
Yes.
How about if I upload that, or you want me to just send it to you? Which way do you want me to do it?
Whatever's easiest for you. Both
Okay,
work.
all right. Okay. And then do you want to take care of, I hate to delete something that other people, have done, but I don't think that there's been anything that anybody else has put in besides myself. To delete one, because it's going to be a little confusing.
On the downtown one you're talking about now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so yeah.
Okay, we'll talk in.
Anna can sort that out.
But that's the plan, just from.
Sounds great. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Bob Moss, could you email me the copy of the typical or sample letter of support letter? Just email, you said you had one? Letter of support from the developers and stuff?
But somebody mentioned there was a sample letter.
I think it was Al Hamilton's gotten one from, not Jamie Eldridge, who's the other one? Maybe Kate Donahue. It was in something that he sent out today.
Yes, but Anna said she had a sample
Yes.
letter of support.
Oh, okay, sorry.
A support letter, that if you could just send that to me, and I'll send it to
absolutely.
those guys and see if I can just get in a few days, get a letter out of each of them.
Yeah,
They're probably the two biggest developers up and down Route 9, other than EMC.
great.
Good. Okay, that's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Roll call vote, Claire,
Claire, yes.
Bob,
Robert Moss, yes.
Alan,
Yes.
and Sam is yes. Thanks very much, folks, and
Thank
we'll
you.
hit it again Thursday evening.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
great
Ann and
day.
Chris.
Bye all.
Thanks.
Thank you.